Recording. Okay. May 21st. Oh my goodness. It is almost summertime. And we have a great guest today, and things are popping everywhere. Uh, the competition, the free markets, companies coming and going. It's quite fascinating what's happening in the last 2 weeks. I think things are settling in many ways, and in many ways, a lot of things are just starting to get disrupted. So may you live in interesting times, said the Chinese proverb. But before we get going, let's have our own John Sibley Butler play some music.
When I was just a wee little lad, Daddy to me, my father home would brought home and gave to me a toy. A wonder to behold it was, with many colors bright. And the minute that I laid eyes on it, it became a heart's delight. And it went zip when it moved and pop when it stopped and whirl when it stood still. I never knew just what it was, and I guess I never will. Well, the years gone by so quickly since I have my own little boy. And yesterday I gave to him my marvelous little toy. His eyes nearly dropped right out of his head, and he gave a squeal of glee. Neither one of us knows just what it is, but he loves it just like me. It still goes zip when it moves and when it stops, and whirl when it stands still. I never knew just what it was, and I guess I never will.
Woo! Well done, Johnny.
How are you doing? I used to sing that to my kids.
You did that, Johnny. You did that so well. There is no need to say anything in the next hour.
Well, you know,
That's right.
as the
Wow.
president of the United States would say, I just want to fail. I just want to know what it is not to do something good. It was very good, very good.
So I wanted to give you guys a quick update on things. So remember that the peak on ERCOT used to be 85 gigawatts. So now the peak is getting closer to 95 gigawatts. People
Wow.
keep moving to Texas every day. I don't know what's going on.
Well, it's
This
a lot.
is
I tell you what,
crazy.
That's
it's a lot going on, from big airplanes that will replace, the craziest thing that you ever heard of, an airplane from another country replacing our Air Force One for a while. And
wow. Yes.
that's crazy. And I just told the president, can you just bring me back just a little jet, a $50 million jet, with an endowment for a pilot. But of course, that's going on. But the big thing is the Middle East is coming back into the news in a big way. What's going on in the Middle East and Gaza, and the humanity and the starving, and the it's pretty interesting to see in 2025 what happened in the 1700s. So I think that's the big thing. But as Andreas was saying, the electrical grid would be a problem. We know it will be a problem without controls, and we just want to add capacity to it, but you have to control the capacity as it grows. So I think that is absolutely huge. And the entrepreneurship stuff, of course, is really, really big in the sense that there are so many people being laid off now. I've probably seen more entrepreneurship stuff, in the last number of weeks than I've seen in a long, long time. And another trend that will happen, I think, as a professor here, University of Texas, with the best and the brightest, I think they're going to start going to England. I think they're going to go to China to universities. I think they're going to go to Germany to universities. So I think you're going to see a lot of shift. And remember that America was built on science and technology. And as Lou Ellen said in one of his columns that I read religiously, that without science and technology, then without science and technology, then there's no country. And plus, of course, a lot of the science and technology came from newcomers, people who could come to America with the strength and a vision and a dream that you just cannot kill. You know, I have a book with George Kosmetsky on immigrant entrepreneurship, and I think that's very, very interesting. Now, the question that we have to ask is this: to what extent, and I want Louis Allen to comment on this, to what extent is what America doing for Western civilization rather than America? So I've been reading and listening to a lot of talk shows and listening to a lot of individuals, and you get the sense that the Trump experiment is not just about America; it's about Western civilization. That is, it's about the northern countries in Europe, the Scandinavian countries, or the Nordic countries, and will China be able to move the center of gravity to China over there, the Far East, than Western civilization? And when you listen to Trump talk about the killing that's going on in Europe, it's like you're killing people in Western civilization. When you hear Trump say that even Germany does not have the mechanics, the tradition of building great machines that they used to have, it's all gone to China now. You wonder out loud, Llewellyn, is this about not just America, but about Western civilization, about Germany, England, Scandinavia, or what we call the Western, since the 1300s, since the Germans threw out the Romans and etc. I think that's a philosophical question that I want Llewellyn to answer.
We are at a seminal point, and we are at a time when things are not going to be as they were. There have been such radical changes in the last few months that we cannot put things back as they were. We Americans have antagonized the Europeans. I don't say that because I'm in London at the moment. I'm here for quite a different reason. But we've antagonized the Europeans. They're worried about the future of NATO. We've antagonized Canada. We've antagonized Central America, Mexico going south to Panama. This is not doing much for Western civilization, but we've also shot ourselves in the foot, so to speak, because what is America? To this point in time, flawed though it may be and may have been, it was also the moral leader, the technological leader since the end of the Second World War, the shining city on a hill, as Ronald Reagan said, and people looked up to America. That's why so many migrants want to come, not only because there's economic opportunity, but because there's a special kind of freedom here, or there has been to this point in time, and it seems to have evaporated. We have everybody and his brother being investigated by the Justice Department for trivial reasons. This puts a kind of fear in the country. We have these huge and brutal ICE arrests and expulsions from the country, sometimes of people who should not be expelled, let alone sent to prisons or to places where there's a war, South Sudan, Libya. This is nonsense. Ukraine itself. We are not showing the leadership in Ukraine that we need to, because if you talk about Western civilization, it's on the knife edge in Ukraine. If Russia wins that, the Baltic states go next, and you get really a collapse of the world order that has prevailed essentially since the end of the Second World War. So it's a very dangerous time. You talk about the future of electricity, and I should address that. We are using more all the time. We are expelling our best scientists, so we're not getting we won't have the kind of research we had.
Come closer, Llewellyn. Come closer.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah, he's
After all, he is in
in
London.
the internet in England is not as good as the US.
Right. I think what he was saying was that we have made a lot of our friends angry. And I think his point was that perhaps it's not about Western civilization, but I think when you weigh the idea of what the president's trying to do in asking Europe to take full, more in the defense of Europe and to do those kind of things, I think that was Llewellyn's point, that we have really made our friends mad in America and in Canada and in Europe. So perhaps it's not about Western civilization. Well, he's back.
But there's a treaty with the Brits. I don't know why we're saying that.
Yeah.
Well, they also think that we're not taking the moral stand we should in the Middle East. We're cozying up to dictators. We're receiving things that look like bribes. The president doesn't need to get an airplane from Qatar. I've been there. I know that country. These are our competitors in selling natural gas around the world. They've got all their money comes from natural gas, and now we're embracing our competitor in an unnecessary way, and certainly optically looking as though we accept bribes, and our only interest is how much money we can get out of somebody, or how much money the president and his family can get, which is rather more disturbing.
Yeah, I think America's always been a big 501c also, instead of just a deal. That is, we have we'll pay $3 billion a year to a country in something that we don't know, to make sure there's a democracy there, or that our everything is protected.
What are you talking about? What country?
Pardon? Well, I mean, if you look at how we support countries around the globe, right?
Well,
for the protection of democracy. So we can start with Israel.
We've done pretty well at it.
Well, we can look at, we're going to support Israel because of our interests around the globe. And then if you look at Taiwan, if you look at what we've done, we're going to support Taiwan because of our interests around the globe. So what I'm saying is that America, the country, has always understood that two things, Llewellyn, that there were only bad leaders and everybody loves freedom. So the idea of American war and peace is that there was nothing wrong with the Germans. You just get rid of Hitler, they're fine people. There's nothing wrong with the Southerners in America. You get rid of the leadership and they're fine people. There's nothing wrong with the Japanese. Get rid of the leadership and they're fine.
Correct.
So the idea of peace was that all people are peace loving, but they just have bad governments. So I think that what has made America different is that the quote quest for democracy around the world was real, and I think that our pocketbooks went there too.
Right. Anyway, let me take this conversation to a positive note with our guest, Constanze Kratel, who is working for Outlier.ai, and I'm curious to find out what it is that's all about. And Catherine is showing some college colors behind her. And she's had roughly some 20 years of experience dealing with development and cloud and API ecosystems and all kinds of cool things about where the world is heading with, all this software doing everything. Welcome, Constanze.
Thank you so much, Andres, and so nice to meet all of you. I'm glad to be on your show. Nice to meet you.
Absolutely. Tell us quickly a little bit more about you and Outlier.ai and maybe one or two projects you're probably working on.
Just a moment. I'm having a problem with my connection here in this hotel, and it keeps fading. So if I disappear, it's not because Johnny's turned me off.
We can see you fine right now.
We're keeping our fingers crossed for you.
Okay, good show. Sorry about that, but I thought I should make the point.
Absolutely. So my name is...
Go ahead, Constanze.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. My name is Constanze. I currently live in Austin, Texas. I'm originally from Germany, but really, that's why it was funny hearing you talk about Germany and Europe and all. But I've lived in the US actually longer than I've lived in Germany, and I actually have dual citizenship. And you see my college colors. Yes, I just graduated with an MBA from the IMBA program at Geese in Illinois. So I basically did my whole program online, and just last weekend actually got to go and see my professors and see my school. And I have to say, I was very impressed about the whole program they are pulling together. Lots and lots of graduates. And yes, I've been working with AI for altogether probably now coming on 2 years. I started at actually with BigCommerce when I was managing our developer tools platform and our developer relations. And that's when we really first started to put a focus on AI. And we had a big AI hackathon. It's, when everybody started talking AI, that's the new great thing, even though it isn't that new. And we hosted an AI hackathon together with Google, and was really pretty successful. We had 150 developers work with us, and great collaboration with Google. And they had multiple projects, some of which were actually included in the BigCommerce platform, the e-commerce platform. Ones of you who don't know BigCommerce, it's something like really similar to Shopify e-commerce platform. And in the e-commerce world, AI has been a big buzzword for multiple reasons, really the main thing being generative AI. So last October, I actually started doing work for Outlier.ai. And you may want to know, what is Outlier? So Outlier, and I just found that out, is actually owned by this big AI company called Scale AI, which is based out of San Francisco.
Mhm.
So it's one of their companies. And it's growing tremendously as everybody is trying to train their large language models. I actually started out working with German language models, but really anybody, they're looking for people with skills in any kind of area. I moved on to math. I've been working on a project actually using vision, training the models to do better with interpreting, with encoding and decoding images, and all kinds of images, handwritten images, screenshots. And this was especially interesting in the realm of mathematics. How will the model interpret an image? And then we would give the model certain prompts, like, for example, from looking at this image, can you help me calculate or define if these two items converge or whatever else? And we would ourselves provide the model with an answer and then see what the model could. And it's super interesting to see how far the models are coming. I've been working with vision projects with mathematics. I'm now actually taking on a bigger role with overseeing AI contributors and making sure that they adhere to the guidelines. And it's just amazing. I had a big training session last weekend to find out how it is growing, the company, the efforts in the AI realm, how many different experts are actually being sought. And I think it will change things a lot, how we work. I've worked, as Andres was saying, I've been working with developer platforms for more than 20 years. I started out at Microsoft, and I've been working a lot with coding, APIs, and I'm really seeing how AI is taking over a lot of this work. And that's something, it's scary. It's also exciting, of course. But for me, I feel like it's important for me to stay at the forefront of this development.
I think it's kind of, yeah, I think it's absolutely interesting. First of all, from a professor's point of view, we are being pushed back to the core disciplines. And that is, it's not so much mathematics as is pure statistics, which are very different. And I think that the big issue is, how do you get on the regression line? It's a whole series of predictions, and it's linear, and then it's a logic, and you ask, is that a car or not? Is that a deer or not? Right, and that becomes the logic equation. So what I find interesting is that the people who majored in those areas that push statistics, right, psychology, sociology, economics, right, are at the forefront now, because I had PhD students in statistics who went straight out of, one of them dropped out of their PhD program for $300,000 a year, because in addition to the equations, you also need a theory, or it's what we used to call garbage in or garbage out, when data came. So every enterprise is going to need a theory, unless you just run a lot of correlation matrix and see what happens, right? But I want to ask you this, and I'm going to give you an experience that I had. So I'm writing a paper now, and I wanted to go back and look at my statistics books to make sure that the equations were right. I went to deep AI, and I said, write the logistic equations, right, for X, blah, 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 and it did it in 2 seconds.
Yep.
Absolutely 2 seconds, right? And then, of course, did you hear about the student who requested her tuition back because the professor used AI to grade her paper?
I haven't heard that, really.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So she said, look, if AI is going to grade my paper, I want it back. But here's my question. You're right in the middle of it, right? I want you to tell me, if you were my PhD student, and I want you to tell me what, in broad sense, occupations will be affected the most with AI. Just not by Googling it, but just by thinking intuitively.
So we actually, my family and I, we talk about this quite a bit. What occupations? Good questions. You do definitely the traditional hands-on occupations, I think, will be affected the least. We've been talking a lot, like medicine, for example. We do think that certain areas of medicine will be affected by AI, especially like interpreting charts, for example, like the work that, radiologists do right now. I think that will be very much affected by AI. What else? I used to work in, technical writing, user API, developer documentation. I'm afraid that occupation will be close to eliminated. Wow, I mean, I don't know, eliminated, but I think there will be less and less technical writers who will be necessary. And a lot of people I've worked with in the past, because I used to manage documentation teams, they are concerned about that, especially like developer documentation. You can almost already now generate that kind of content with AI. Also, my husband, he is a developer, a senior developer. He's actually an architect, and he is worried that coding, we look a lot at coding, and we've been working at it. Like, you go into something like Visual Studio Code and Copilot, and it can really write the code by itself. So we think that will be affected very much by AI. So a lot of these IT jobs, we have been talking about, like certain things, if you set up a complicated DevOps project, I think a lot of the planning can already be done by AI. Okay, so what else? Like I said, the medical field, of course, you will always need hands-on doctors, but this interpretation of complex images will be done by AI. I think also probably industrial automation be replaced.
Absolutely. And what's frightening to me is that I said, build me a web page, and it did it.
Yes, it did. Same for me. I used this tool called Replit, exactly like
build
the
me a web page with
Yes.
X, Y, and Z, and it brought up the codes, and then I just went and stuck the codes into the browser, and there my web page was. So, considering
Same
that,
here.
the next question is, as universities think about training, for me, a university is to is to go and meet people, join a fraternity. It's all about networking. It's not about
Absolutely.
necessarily learning, right? Although learning is there, but I mean, you go to the University of Texas to connect to people for things to do, right?
Absolutely.
And matter of fact, if you go to the Ivy League, you can major in anything and then go to Wall Street, right? Because
Yes.
so how would you reinterpret education from first grade? Would you change it? Are we back now to the core reading, writing, and arithmetic? Because I can create an entire newspaper through AI now.
I
No
know.
problem. With headlines and everything, right? So how would you think about the retraining? And this is different than television. It's different than flight. It's different than the computer. It's different than the calculator. I mean, you know, I had a slide rule. It's just different because a slide rule didn't think for you. How would
Yes.
you think about teaching your kids now?
And I think we have to be very careful here not to let AI take over everything. So I grew up in Germany. We had a very rigid education system where a lot of memorization, a lot of really, really heavy stuff. My sister always says, why did I learn all of this now? You know, we had heavy math. Now, since I've been interpreting math models, I'm glad I did this. I still feel like we need to be very, very careful not to have AI take over education. I still feel like students really need to learn the basics, the humanities, especially, but they also need to have their math skills. They need to train their brain, you know, the way we train AI. I think it's very, very important not to let go of this. I think there's a big problem in education as far as like plagiarism. I think this is definitely huge. Even, you know, in the time since I started my online MBA and finished it, a lot of students, you know, they've been starting to use AI tools, and, you know, we have like the AI check and everything. I would teach students to understand AI and to use AI as a tool, but I would not deviate from in-person learning and from really teaching them all the basic things that they've had to learn. Okay, so maybe they don't need to use a slide rule anymore, but I'm actually sad. So my son, he is 13, my younger son, and I'm sad to see they didn't even learn how to properly write by hand.
Oh no, I mean, I asked my grandson, what's 10 and 10? And he said, you expect for me to process that in my head? Whipped out his calculator and said it's 20.
It's
So
exactly, it's
good
very
luck with
sad.
that.
My son, he can type like speed typer. I mean, he also likes to spend time on the computer, but when, you know, I in Germany had to learn how to write with a fountain pen, and it's a skill I'm proud of. You know, so honestly, now think about this. Think about the worst case scenario, and think about all of a sudden we had a blackout. And, you know, all of a sudden, or you're driving somewhere, your phone doesn't work or something, you actually need to have the tools, no matter what. We always take it so much for granted now.
Just
think about it, like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, there wasn't Wi-Fi everywhere, you know?
Right.
I remember going to Germany, for example, from like, you know, Redmond, Washington, and they wouldn't have Wi-Fi, or you would have to dial in a very complicated way. We always take this for granted, and that we have all this super computing power. And yes, of course, it's going to grow. But as far as education go, I would teach students, first of all, also there needs to be the ethics of AI. We need to teach students the ethics of AI usage, use AI as a tool, but also do the things. And I know with my son, he likes to spend time on the computer, but then I'm so happy when I see him outside play soccer or football and be a real kid and get off
Yeah,
this.
I got it.
Does that make
Well, thank
sense?
you. My distinguished colleague is in this country that he loves, England.
Yes.
So I'm gonna defer to him and see if I can call Washington so he can stay over there.
There's a possibility. I'm not sure where they would deport me to, Zimbabwe or Britain. It is a question. I think this is all very interesting. I would suggest that what's going to happen in education is we're going to have to wait, actually, till we get a generation of teachers who have grown up with AI. We're going through that awkward situation where basically adults are talking to children in terms of AI without any organic sense of AI themselves. In 20 years, there won't be a problem with AI in teaching because you'll have teachers who grew up with AI and have learned how to apply it. That's a time thing. Elsewhere in AI, I think you're right. I think that you're going to lose a lot of white-collar jobs. This is the first time you're going to see a huge employment retraction in the white-collar areas. And again, Constance, you're absolutely right. People who work with tools will be fairly safe. Those people we need to build the nuclear power plants are not going to do it with AI. They may be designed with AI, especially the fuel, especially the out years. The predictive qualities of AI are essential, or at least very, very important. But people who, plumbers and mechanics, are remarkably secure, or should be, in a world where many other jobs will be changed. The question, and I think we can't answer it, but will it be the same as it was with automation, where more things were made, more people had to make more things, there were just more things, and therefore the jobs were created? We don't know now. It looks as though, rather than being additive, that AI is subtractive, that it will take away jobs and not necessarily replace them. I always feel for people who are not really very smart and who can't learn complex things. I used to have a small publishing company in Washington and employed printers, and these were great men, but they had great difficulty if you even change a small setting on a press and say, we're going to do it this way going forward. They were very insecure with change, and that's a huge pressure in society produced by AI. On the other hand, medicine will surge ahead, not only because you will have better reading, you will have better predictive medicine, although that has its own consequence because it can generate a lot of anxiety in the patient. You don't actually want to know that you're going to get Alzheimer's or when you're likely to die. You would rather that be a mystery. So some predictive, but in a large measure, predictive matters will go very well. With AI itself, we need a lot of discipline in the systems. We need to find ways in which AI can police itself, which we've got to get rid of the hallucinations. There's a tendency, as we've seen, for AI, when the neural networks start chatting to each other, which I think they do, and obviously I'm generationally challenged by this, they want to please. So you get these terrible lies. You get a book review of a book that doesn't exist. You get citations in court cases. And there is, I think, the great liability, the security liability of backdoor. During machine learning, that negatives are introduced into a system, so-called backdoors, which is very serious when you come to, let's say, large power plants. It's very serious when you come to anything to do with national defense, where if a malicious person could bury something in a back door and activate it at their will, that is very worrisome. Two questions that I have, which I hope you can answer them, or at least we can debate them together. One is, if you hand over an operational system, like an electric utility, but the OT, if you hand over the OT to AI, can you get it back? And the other question is, can AI be trained to be its own policeman and therefore eradicate a lot of these vulnerabilities that I've just talked about?
That's a good question. So if you hand over a system to AI, can we get it back? Potentially, I think it would be possible, but it might mean rebuilding the original system the way it was.
For example, if we had aircraft, and pilots nowadays are largely systems managers.
Yes.
They're managing but they can all retrieve the airplane and hand fly it.
Exactly.
But will you be able to retrieve that airplane when AI is flying it, or will it say, no, 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 no,
No,
I'm
no.
flying this, but this is my airplane now, or some version of that. And that intrigues me,
That
particularly
is
when you
intriguing. Yeah.
when you come to it, and nobody. I've asked a lot of people, mostly at university people, but some who are doing hands-on AI, like at INL and EPRI and places like that, and I get 50-50 answers. Some say yes. INL has a system, and is a very brilliant guy there who explained how you could maintain a control with like a third system.
With the third system, yes.
Yeah, but people aren't going to do that. They'll do it the cheap way. They won't do the third system. The other thought I have is there is a school of thought in computing that you'll get that computing has gotten so complex that it could collapse under its own weight. I have a colleague who works for a national security agency, and this is a preoccupation of his. I think they call it emergence, where a whole complex system is so complex that some small fault in it, unknown, code written 50 years ago, could trigger a collapse, like a building where there was bad cement somewhere in it, and decades later it collapses. Then that's possibility with all of computing. How do you feel about that, Constance?
I think it is actually a scary thought when you bring this up, because, and I've talked to people too, it's a little bit almost like the Y2K scare, where people were afraid that the system would collapse. There are a lot of old systems, even in the areas such as banking. And I am personally actually surprised that everything has held up the way it has. And I think it will actually need some very, very careful infrastructure planning. I talked to somebody the other day who was looking for developer evangelists. They're building this end-to-end event-based tool, and he's going to market this as a tool where you can plug in multiple AI agents. And he said, yes, he's been working on migrating old systems off their obsolete infrastructure onto this tool. So my fear is that, there has to be migration, there has to be planned efforts, because what happens to the old systems who don't do this kind of planned migration?
Wow.
Will they miss the boat?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Let me ask a question that's kind of like Llewellyn's, but it goes to private. The story is told that the husband asked the wife, "Why are you speaking so softly in
Yes.
the house? Why are you speaking so softly?" And she said, "I was afraid that Mark Zuckerberg was listening." And he laughed, the wife laughed, Alexa laughed, Siri laughed, and the Tesla laughed. Comment on that.
That's a good one.
The wife was speaking softly. "Why are you speaking softly?" "I'm afraid that Zuckerberg is listening."
In television,
laughed, Alexa laughed, Siri laughed, and Tesla laughed. Comment on that
when
for
somebody,
me.
we have a thing in television, when somebody closes a microphone, puts their hand over it, the sound engineer turns it up high because we know they're saying something they shouldn't be saying.
So do we
Absolutely.
have, with the AI then, that's quite a comment, don't you think? That people are afraid to in their house because the car is laughing, Siri is laughing, Alexa is laughing, everybody's laughing. So what's going on here with AI?
It is actually pretty scary. I agree. I sometimes, and I don't want to mention the name now because she will go off on me, because we have multiple of these devices in the house, but she sometimes would go off when nobody was even asking her, and you think, are they constantly spying on us? It is very scary. I think here is one thing where, especially also in academics and teaching, there needs to absolutely be something called AI ethics. It's not
Sure.
just a technical part. And there needs to be almost like, what would I call it, ethical governance of AI systems. To also go back to Llewellyn's question before, we need to be really, really actually careful. And yeah, will AI be able to self-police? I think we need to start working towards that and start building in those safeguards. And I know we at Outlier, we review and we train prompts. We review the safety of a prompt or of a response. But I personally, I'm not that deep into the whole subject that I would know of any like ethical governance efforts. And I mean, this also includes, of course, security, but it's really the ethical part.
Yeah.
I
You
think
know,
there is a major need for that.
yeah, I agree. Let me follow up with, I thought Watson was AI and IBM didn't know what to do with it. When
Yes.
20, 30 years ago, Watson was playing chess against people. I
Oh,
thought,
yes.
yeah. How do you think, if on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we with AI? Is AI just a baby now and it's going to grow up? Now, can you imagine that? I'm going to say it again. So we started flight, right? With just
Mhm.
right, whatever, and look at the Boeing 747s now, and that's no time. So consider that AI now is the Wright brothers, and it's going to be where the 747 is now.
Yeah.
Where are we now? Are we in the
Oh,
baby start of AI? It's going to get bigger and bigger. And the second question is, the wealth, is going to go people who have the AI. So American companies will get stronger, and companies like yours will also create jobs. But people will lose jobs. So the second part of that is, how many jobs do you see AI actually creating like yours?
I think it's a very temporary thing, actually. I think the jobs
Hmm.
that they're creating now, and because I've been looking for roles too, every company now is hiring for AI prompt engineers or AI product managers or something. I think it's more of a temporary thing. I don't think this will be permanent jobs necessarily. Of course, there will have to be the data scientists and the engineers who build on the systems, but I don't think it's going to be in the long run. In fact, even roles like what I'm doing with Outlier, I've heard people tell me, yeah, you're actually working on putting people out of work. So as far as the planes, okay, I love aviation. My son loves aviation. He grew up in Seattle, and we used to visit the Museum of Life. I look at aviation, and I think, yeah, it moved fast, but has it really changed, like from 1970 or so when the 747 came out to now? I don't think anything revolutionary has actually happened. And that would actually pull it even back the first jet plane actually was the Comet. And I'm kind of an airplane nerd. The Comet, the ill-fated Comet that blew up. That British kind of cool looking airplane. And then the first jet plane flew in like 1959, like the Boeing ones. I don't think things have changed that much with airplanes because it still takes you 7 hours to fly from, maybe North Carolina to London or something like that. So even though they might, have better engines and better material, like look at the 787, the whole way it has changed. Travel hasn't really changed in, 60 years that much, except that it's gotten more prevalent and the whole outside the infrastructure has changed,
Yeah,
of course.
right.
So
Because I could go back to before jets.
yeah, we have to go back before jets, So yeah, what would I say? Where's AI? Maybe AI is like the funny. I love the Pan Am clippers. I used to love looking at them, the Boeing Museum. Is it at that phase or is it still at a biplane? Maybe it's at one of those World War I biplanes. I don't know. What would you
I
think?
think you make a very interesting point, and
Yeah.
that is there is a stage of optimum development
Yeah.
where there are only small improvements. Automobiles they're not really very different from what they were in the 1920s. They've got a
Yes.
lot of improvements, but there's still four wheels, some sort of locomotion provided by an engine, which a differential joint. I mean, some of these things are amazingly constant and have been for a very, very long time. I like to think about airplanes. The only thing that's changed since the 707 is they made the bathrooms and the seats smaller.
Yes, yes, that's true. They made it less comfortable, that's for sure. Yes. Absolutely.
It actually got bigger on my private plane, but we'll have that discussion later.
That's funny. So yes.
So Constance, what kind of projects are you working on these days?
So right now we're starting a new project. It's I'm actually working on German, Austrian language, a vision project again. And this is not just math, it's just, and I actually literally just started on this project last week, where we are working with clients. And again, it's interpreting all kinds of different visual materials. Like I could be looking at an old handwritten cooking recipe or something, and I'll have AI interpret that for me. Or like maps, that's still very, very hard. For example, if you want AI actually to interpret or generate a map from a picture, they still have a lot of hallucinations. So we are looking at training training the AI models with the visuals and generate new visuals and really evaluate the quality of that. And I think that will go for a while. I will probably then move back to something more mathematics related again, but this is visuals right now are really the biggest thing we're doing.
It's very, very interesting. I think that if you look at how we are looking at the interpretation, because
Yes.
I found fascinating that how we go from language, for example, from the different languages, from English to German, or German to English, to
Yes.
English to French. Comment on the internationalization, if you will, of AI, and especially when it comes to the, I spent 14 summers in Germany. When it comes
Really?
to
Oh my gosh.
I mean, not Germany, I'm sorry, in Japan. When it comes to the calligraphy writing.
So I need to play around with this more, because I studied, I've only been to Japan once, but I actually studied Japanese history. I got a master's in Japanese history.
Oh, genki desu ka?
Genki desu ne.
Genki desu.
So yes, and I actually did want to get a PhD in Seattle and ended up at Microsoft. And sometimes this is still my dream to get that. So I remember actually when I started at Microsoft, I was sharing an office with two Japanese ladies, and we were translating the surface, the UI of mobile devices. So that was more than 20 years ago. And one thing was they were doing the Japanese part. I did the German part because I needed native speakers. And we already back then had like the input editors for Japanese. And with the Japanese kanji, for example, they are so exact with their, how, it's called furikasu, the number of strokes and everything in which direction it goes. That is actually fairly easy for a model to learn that. I learned that more than 20 years ago. I actually have to play around, but the little bit I've seen, AI has done a pretty good job. But you know what? After this talk, I'm going to play around, because the harder thing to me would be, and this has always been for me as a student of Japanese, to interpret handwritten calligraphy.
Yeah, that's
Because
good.
that has a lot of variation. But I'm sure I took calligraphy courses in Japan, and they are very, very strict, actually, that you go exactly, it's almost like a Zen kind of act.
Absolutely.
Memorize the direction and the brush stroke and everything. So because there is that strictness, my guess would be, but I can't say that for sure because I haven't used
Well, I
it
would
much.
think that the calligraphy writers would have to catch up with the non-calligraphy.
Yes.
Also, the recognition.
So Constance, What are your favorite tools for AI? I'm sharing my screen.
What are my favorite tools? Do you know what? So I use different tools for different things. I also, you guys don't have this on here, Grok.
Grok, okay.
I
Oh,
really,
Grok.
I really like Grok. So here's Duolingo. I like Duolingo. I know my younger son uses Duolingo because he should learn some German. I use ChatGPT. Okay, so if I have like math related questions where I really need some deep thinking, Grok honestly does a better job. When I like say, hey, help me with a cover letter or help me, summarize this and that for me, ChatGPT does really well. Microsoft Copilot, I've used that as well. Used a little bit of Gemini at Outlier. We use Gemini. And of course, I don't want to say her name because if I say it now, you will hear some response in the background because we have multiple of them. Grammarly, as like, for example, in technical writing and in marketing writing, we use that a lot. By the way, content marketing is also one of these jobs. I feel like that will be hugely impacted by AI. I took several marketing classes, and I mean, we've already talked about the trend because you can really churn out high quality content. So yes, as far as images, I still use DALL-E. DALL-E does a pretty good job. But yeah, like the other day I had to help my son with an infographic and he had to have a map of Nepal with the declining snow levels in the Himalayas. And DALL-E created a map for me, but it was absolutely hallucinating. It had just weird signs, weird country names, and I thought it was very interesting. It created the map based on a map, and that's the area from working with visuals where I know it's still hard. But yeah, I would say Grok. My husband likes to use, now he works with Claude quite a bit, with in Claude, he thinks that's pretty good. They all have their qualities. They have their pros and cons. Some of them are encoders, some are decoders, some have both. If they have both the transcoding functionality, then they're basically more powerful.
Wow.
Sure.
I mean, that was a great answer because they're different. We know there are different AI tools for different things.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And I'm learning as I go along, basically. So
Is Llewellyn still with us, Llewellyn?
Difficulty with my connection here, but my experience, which is very limited because it's only for research, I find Grok the best.
Yes.
I find it has fewer errors. I usually check out one by looking myself up. And if I find out I've had all kinds of wonderful jobs I've never had, I know it's a liar. I found Grok fairly accurate and DeepSeek fairly accurate. I find ChatGPT not so good. And Copilot seems to be lazy. It just doesn't seem to do what you want it to. It gives you a rather superficial answer and says, well, you should go and read this or that. But I find Grok really the best for my purposes, which are very simple and quite superficial. I did ask it something the other day, and it wrote a whole article that was not that dissimilar from what I might have written, which was disturbing. But that's the future. However, I wanted to ask you before we leave, what about general AI? Are we going to see that in the next how many years?
You mean generative AI?
Yeah.
I'm sure for a while. I would say so. I mean, that's basically the most, like, for example, in e-commerce where I've worked.
Obviously, we are at the exciting. I think it's frightening in some ways. and wonderfully exciting, especially for medicine,
Yeah.
and for easing problems in society which are caused by ignorance,
Yes.
not knowing. And there will be fewer things that will go wrong or be punitive simply because we don't know, because we can get the information to ameliorate that situation. I also think AI is very interesting in that the workforce is leading the companies. While the C-suite is debating what they should do about AI, all the people working in their cubicles are using it every day. So this is a somewhat upside down world.
It is.
The workforce is ahead of the leaders, of the bosses.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's absolutely true. Yes, totally.
We haven't seen that very often.
Yes. I think like academia, that will be a very interesting area. How, first of all, I mean, curricula have to be created to teach AI, to teach using, creating, working with it. It will be very interesting to see how it evolves. It will be a challenge.
Yeah, before we leave, just comment on China's DeepSeek and how did you see that and where we are in the world versus what the Chinese are doing. I think that we don't want to, I think we can learn from that. I don't think we want to demonize them or go to war with them. Everybody be talking about going to war. But how do you see it when it came out that DeepSeek was such a revelation? Did you say, oh, we're already doing that? That there are things happening in other countries that you don't know about, and the Chinese just commercialized it first. How did you see that? How did you see that? The DeepSeek or the Chinese? Uh-oh. Did we lose her too?
I don't know.
Are you asking me or?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So what was that called? The deep?
Yeah, the Chinese version of AI.
I honestly haven't really, spent much time with it, so I couldn't really give you an educated, answer.
Well, it was called DeepSeek.
DeepSeek.
It caused quite a stir in America because the idea was that the Chinese software had jumped ahead of America. Plus, they did it at a third of the cost.
So I personally couldn't give you much of an educated answer. Sorry about that because I haven't really been.
Because when Andreas put the tools up there, it was not up there.
It sounds scary though.
There's thousands of tools. There are thousands of tools.
Yes, there are. Right.
So Constance, what is in it for you in the next 6 months? What are you doing? Any conferences? Anything you can share? What's up to you?
So, but we are also I will continue working with Outlier, but since I just graduated with my MBA, I'm also, of course, looking for more strategic roles, maybe within scale. That would be interesting. I'm trying to look at some conferences, but haven't really planned for it yet. And we have some projects. My husband and I, we're looking at some kind of ed tech project that utilizes AI in a way where it actually helps students focus on the right learning. We have a 13-year-old middle school son, and it's actually very hard because they work with different tools. It's very hard to keep up. When I was his age, I had a little notebook where I would write my homework and everything in there. We never know what is actually doing. We want to have some kind of great optimizing. We're working on it. Still trying to figure that out, but I'd really like to get involved in that area more.
Okay.
And
gentlemen, final thoughts. Llewellyn. Llewellyn's frozen. John.
I think that when I think about any kind of tool, whether it is a typewriter or whether it's a computer, I always think about the application to business enterprise, and I think about the training that's going to be done. I think Llewellyn was correct in saying that as the next generation is more comfortable with AI, then it'll be just another television and just be another automobile, just another computer. But in the meantime, we're right in the middle a revolution. It's a revolution of thought. It's a revolution of education. As I said earlier, I think that AI takes us back to the early training of mathematics. You remember that if you look at neural networks, it's coming out of psychology and the mapping of the brain. And if you look at all of those things, so we have wrapped computer science, which came out of logic, Aristotle's logic, right? We have wrapped that around statistics and mathematics. And so the geniuses of the future will not just be computer scientists. It's back to, can you do math? It's back to, can you do statistics? It's back, do you understand regression equations? Do you understand logic equation? Do you understand Markov chains? So I think those things got kind of lost in the business world, but I think they're back now. And I think that the whole idea of colleges will emerge, and not just the quote trade school. Yeah.
Sure.
I'd like to say that I think AI is going to be much more profound. It's not just another tool. It is a whole new way of living. It is much faster in its implications than anything to this point, except maybe the printing press. It is so huge, and we've hardly got our arms around it. And it will be largely a tool for good, but there will be evil as well. And I just I've got to get off, but it's a pleasure being with you, Constance. You're a very brilliant woman, and it's a pleasure. And a wonderful contrast to my poor friend, John Sibley Butler.
Oh,
I take that as a compliment.
You too, and I would love to continue the conversation sometime. Bring my husband in, because we always talk at home, and he knows it very much from the computer science side, and yes, it's always.
Johnny, take us away.
Yes, sir.
I have to go. Bye-bye. Thank you.
In the November morning chill,
Oh, lovely.
the village is quiet and still. I took a walk through the fallen leaves to the fisheries, where my old friend Pagliacci had coffee for me.
I love it.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
And if you're in Austin, I'll hook up with you on LinkedIn and see if we can get you an opportunity. Okay, thank you.
I would love that. Yes, I am in Austin. Also, you're both.
I'm in Austin too.
Yes, and you teach at UT, right? Or
no, I just retired. I'm emeritus.
oh,
I was there for 42 years.
Wow. Wow.
Excuse me, 48 years. I
my
started
gosh.
when I was 24. I had a PhD.
You know, I always wanted to get a PhD. I have 3 master's degrees now. This is off the record. And my dad, he passed, unfortunately. He always said, why are you not getting a PhD? He had a PhD in chemistry, and I still